As Canada continues to deal with a housing crisis, concerns are growing among advocates around the government's consideration of an international student cap to address it. Multiple provinces have pushed back against the idea of an international student cap, saying that they have not been consulted. Advocates point to the necessity of international students to address demographic challenges and fund universities and colleges. Now, this comes as a recent report released in June by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation indicates that over 22 million units will be needed by 2030. Now, this in order to reach housing affordability for everyone living in Canada. Well, joining us now to give us her take on the housing crisis and the effectiveness of an international student cap is Dr. Carolyn Whitzman, housing policy researcher from the University of Ottawa. Dr. Whitzman, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you, Nima.
So, for some brief perspective, what is the current state of Canada's housing crisis? Just how deep in the hole are we, ma'am?
We're pretty bad. So, in terms of core housing need, which is measured in the 2021 census, we have 1.45 million households who are in unaffordable, overcrowded, and/or poorly repaired homes. That doesn't include 2.2 million students. It doesn't include 235,000 homeless people. It doesn't include 700,000 people in congregate housing, ranging from long-term care to group homes um, to rooming houses. In other words, there's a shortage of at least 3 million households when it comes to low-cost housing.
Quite a severe issue, Doctor. Now, there seems to be a lot of finger pointing when it comes to the housing crisis. We had concerns around international investors, zoning bylaws, and now international students and immigrants. So, what do you make of these latest concerns?
Well, immigrants have always been faulted for failures in policy. Um, in the early 20th century, rooming houses and apartment houses were going to threaten white women. This is just a continuation of concerns about foreigners, which really has very little to do with the actual housing policy crisis that's facing Canadians and failures of all three levels of government.
Now, if it were to be implemented, how would a cap on international students impact housing in Canada, if at all?
I don't think it would have any immediate impact on housing at all. As I said, there's already a shortage of 3 million low-cost homes. The CMHC, as you mentioned, is talking about tripling housing production without some real game changers in terms of housing. The fact that there is immigration, if you stopped immigration, all immigration tomorrow, there would still be a huge housing deficit.
All right, ma'am. So, what's missing in terms of government policy and data when it comes to addressing the housing crisis in Canada?
Well, in the early 1990s, the federal government got out of non-market housing, deeply affordable subsidized housing. That still hasn't been addressed in a major way by the National Housing Strategy. Uh, there is a critical need to intensify cities, allow small apartment buildings. Um, there is the need for some basic data on who needs housing where and at what costs, including students, absolutely. So at the moment, as I mentioned, the census doesn't even include students. In 1991, a political decision was made that students were in a temporary condition of voluntary poverty, and there are no statistics kept by the federal government as to how many students are looking for homes, what is their ability to afford those homes, what kind of overcrowding is going on. I mean, we know anecdotally that we have 14 students renting a two-bedroom apartment, these sort of extreme conditions, but we don't even have the basics of knowing what the baseline is, let alone what the impact of policies would be. And there has been no conscious effort by any level of government to fund student housing in the way that there was in the 70s and 80s before the federal government stepped away from non-market housing.
Sounds like a lot of data is missing, ma'am. Lots to do in order to address the housing crisis. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to unpack further, but I really appreciate you joining us on Forum Daily, Doctor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nima. Bye-bye.